Prisons are meant to hold criminals, to serve justice, to rehabilitate the broken. But there are places where the walls do more than contain. They suffocate, they silence, they erase. From the sweltering chaos of Venezuela's La Sabaneta, where inmates ruled over guards, to the icy grip of Russia's Black Dolphin, where the light never turns off and the guards never blink. This is not about overcrowded cells or rusty bars. This is about institutions where humanity has collapsed into horror. Welcome to part 1 of our countdown, the top 10 most notorious prisons in the world, where justice ends and survival begins. Before we dive into these chilling real-life stories, take a moment to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because here, we uncover the stories that many would rather forget, but the world needs to hear. Number 10. La Sabaneta Prison, Venezuela. It's one of the deadliest prisons in the world. A place where the guards are outnumbered, the gangs are in charge, and survival depends not on justice, but on fear. This is La Sabaneta Prison in Venezuela. And this is the story of a broken system that turned a penitentiary into a war zone. Located in the oil-rich city of Maracaibo, Venezuela, La Sabaneta was supposed to be a place where lawbreakers were sent to serve their time. Instead, it became a place where time stood still and lawlessness reigned. Built decades ago to hold just 700 inmates, the prison swelled to a staggering 3,700 prisoners, more than 5 times its intended capacity. But overcrowding was only the beginning of the nightmare. At one point, only 8 armed guards were assigned to manage the entire facility. That's 1 guard for every 462 prisoners. Let that sink in. In most prisons, order is maintained by the state. In La Sabaneta, order was maintained by brutal gangs. These gangs controlled entire sections of the prison. They ran their own internal governments, enforced their own rules, and settled disputes with machetes, gasoline, or firearms smuggled in through corrupt officials. Everyday life was pure chaos. There were no structured meals, no real access to medicine, and no functioning rehabilitation programs. If you wanted to survive, you had to pay for it literally. Inmates bought protection. They bribed guards for food or favors. If you had no money or connections, you were meat. La Sabaneta wasn't just violent, it was decaying. Broken pipes flooded the floors. Rats and insects were part of daily life. Diseases spread fast and so did paranoia. And for many inside, the most dangerous part of the prison wasn't another inmate. It was the people in charge. Riots weren't the exception at La Sabaneta. They were the rule. Disputes over turf, food, stolen weapons, or even gossip could spark full-blown wars that lasted days. With no staff to intervene and no one willing to risk their lives, these riots often ended in bloodshed. One of the most infamous incidents took place in September 2013. It began with a dispute between rival gang factions. At first, it was words, then came knives. Then came automatic rifles smuggled into the prison by gang affiliates, and then chaos. For hours, prisoners fought a war inside the walls, while terrified guards and medical staff stayed back, unable or unwilling to intervene. By morning, 16 inmates were dead. Many were dismembered, burned, or executed in front of others. And here's the haunting part. That wasn't even the deadliest riot in Venezuelan prison history. Venezuela's prison crisis didn't start with La Sabaneta, but the prison became a symbol of everything that was broken. Corruption was rampant. Guards were underpaid and often worked double shifts just to survive. Many turned to smuggling weapons, drugs, or even cell phones in exchange for cash from powerful inmates. The government poured billions into oil subsidies and political propaganda, but neglected infrastructure, prison reform, and basic law enforcement. By 2011, Venezuela had one of the highest incarceration rates in South America, but the lowest ratio of guards to prisoners. And nearly 40% of inmates hadn't even been convicted yet. They were stuck in pretrial detention indefinitely. That meant thousands of prisoners were thrown into La Sabaneta's violent pit without ever being found guilty of a crime. After the 2013 massacre, international media finally turned its attention to La Sabaneta. Human rights organizations slammed Venezuela for its inhumane prison conditions. Images leaked from inside. Prisoners lying in pools of blood. Cells packed with 15 to 20 men. Children visiting family members with rifles hanging over their heads. Under mounting pressure, the Venezuelan government announced that La Sabaneta would be shut down. By late 2013, the process of transferring prisoners to other overcrowded prisons began. But shutting the prison down didn't solve the real problem. The same gangs, the same corruption, the same violence. They simply moved from one hellhole to another. Today, La Sabaneta stands mostly empty. But its legacy lives on. Ask any former inmate what it was like, and you'll hear the same word: terror. There were no second chances, no guards to protect you, no court to hear your pleas. There was only one rule: kill or be killed. For those who lived through it, La Sabaneta wasn't a prison. It was a battlefield. A twisted kingdom ruled not by justice, but by the jungle law of survival. In the heart of Maracaibo, hidden behind crumbling walls and rusted fences, was a place where humanity was stripped away, and monsters were made. La Sabaneta wasn't just a failure of the prison system. It was a failure of a nation to protect its people, even the ones behind bars. Because no matter what you've done, no one deserves to be locked in hell. Number 9. Rikers Island, United States. Just off the coast of New York City, hidden between the Bronx and Queens, sits a small island that has become a symbol of everything wrong with the U.S. justice system. A place meant for short-term incarceration, yet people have died waiting years for trial. A place where correctional officers fear for their lives, and inmates sometimes never walk out. This is the story of Rikers Island, one of America's most notorious jails. Rikers Island isn't a prison, it's a jail complex. But don't let that fool you. With over 400 acres, it's one of the largest correctional facilities in the world. Located in the East River, connected to the city by a single bridge, Rikers is home to 8 different jails, holding men, women, and even minors. Many of the people held here haven't even been convicted of a crime. They're just awaiting trial, in legal limbo. On paper, Rikers is meant to be temporary. In practice, it becomes a nightmare without a sentence. No story captures the failure of Rikers Island like that of Kalief Browder. In 2010, Kalief was just 16 years old when he was accused of stealing a backpack. He maintained his innocence. No trial date was set, and bail was set at $3,000, an amount his family couldn't afford. Kalief spent 3 years in Rikers, 2 of them in solitary confinement. He was beaten by guards, attacked by inmates, denied psychiatric care, and then, without warning, his case was dismissed. No evidence, no trial, no apology. Kalief was released in 2013, but the damage was done. 2 years later, he took his own life. His story shocked the nation and forced a hard look at what Rikers really was, a place where innocence doesn't matter if the system is broken. Rikers has a long-standing reputation for violence, both from inmates and from those sworn to protect them. Inmates speak of the program, where correctional officers allow gang members to enforce order through beatings. Guards themselves have been caught on camera engaging in brutal takedowns of mentally ill prisoners, or turning a blind eye during violent assaults. Between 2021 and 2023, over 30 inmates died while in custody, many from neglect, suicide, or medical issues that went untreated. And with crumbling infrastructure, staff shortages, and outdated facilities, Rikers is not just dangerous, it's degrading. Inmates have been known to sleep on floors, go without food, and defecate in plastic bags when toilets overflow. One public defender once said, "Sending someone to Rikers is not just a holding cell, it's a life-threatening experience." It's not just inmates who are in danger. Rikers is so violent and mismanaged that correctional officers often fear for their lives. Guards have been attacked, spit on, and injured in riots. In 2022, more than 1,300 officers called out sick on a single day, leaving the jail system paralyzed. Rikers is the kind of place where both the jailers and the jailed are victims of a system stretched beyond its limits. And with no proper training or mental health resources, the environment turns every interaction into a confrontation. Even officers who survive often quit after a few months, leaving behind an even more volatile situation. The overwhelming majority of Rikers inmates are Black or Latino. Most come from low-income neighborhoods, and many are only there because they can't afford bail. In essence, Rikers Island has become a place where poverty is criminalized. Pre-trial detainees, people who are legally presumed innocent, can spend months or even years locked up, simply because they're poor. In one documented case, a man was held at Rikers for over 6 years awaiting trial. The racial and class disparities at Rikers have become so severe that even international human rights groups have condemned it. The outrage finally reached a tipping point. In 2019, New York City's mayor announced a historic decision. Rikers Island would be shut down for good by 2026. The plan was to replace it with 4 smaller borough-based jails, with better conditions, community oversight, and shorter commutes for family visits. But the closure hasn't been smooth. Construction delays, political pushback, and rising crime debates have stalled progress. As of 2025, Rikers still houses thousands of inmates. Meanwhile, the cycle of violence and neglect continues. For decades, Rikers Island has been more than a jail. It's been a monument to America's deepest contradictions: justice versus punishment, rehabilitation versus revenge, poverty versus privilege. It's where the lines blur between inmate and victim, between guard and aggressor. And unless real change comes, not just reform, but rebuilding from the ground up, Rikers will remain what it has always been: a cage, floating in the East River, filled with people society has forgotten. Number 8. Tadmor Prison, Syria. It was a prison. But many who entered never came out. Those who did were never the same. In the Syrian desert, far from the eyes of the world, stood a place that turned punishment into pure terror. This is the chilling story of Tadmor Prison, one of the most brutal detention centers ever operated. Tadmor, or Palmyra Military Prison, was built in the 1930s by French colonial authorities, originally as army barracks. But in the 1970s, under the rule of President Hafez al-Assad, it was transformed into something else entirely. What began as a military complex became a factory of fear, designed not to hold criminals but to crush political dissent. Located in the heart of the Syrian desert, near the ancient city of Palmyra, Tadmor was isolated by design. Its location ensured secrecy. What happened inside stayed inside. Tadmor Prison wasn't just a place for confinement, it was a place for systematic torture. Survivors speak of the welcome party, a brutal beating ritual given to every new prisoner. Guards would use sticks, whips, electric cables, and iron bars. Prisoners were forced to crawl through corridors lined with guards, each striking as they passed. Interrogations took place in basement rooms. There were no lawyers, no rights, no limits. Common torture methods included the dulab, forcing a prisoner into a tire, then beating their exposed limbs; the flying carpet, strapping victims to a folding board and bending it backward to cause joint dislocation; electric shocks, burning, starvation, mock executions, all routine. These weren't isolated incidents. They were policy. The goal was to destroy the prisoner physically, mentally, and spiritually. The most horrifying day in Tadmor's history came on June 27, 1980. The night before, the Muslim Brotherhood, an opposition group, had attempted to assassinate President Hafez al-Assad. The next morning, retaliation came swiftly and brutally. Under direct orders from Assad's brother, Rifat al-Assad, soldiers were flown into Tadmor by helicopter. They stormed the prison before dawn. Without warning, they entered dormitories and began executing inmates, one by one, room by room. They used machine guns, knives, explosives. Estimates vary, but at least 1,000 prisoners, mostly political detainees, were killed in a single day. There was no uprising, no provocation, just state-sanctioned slaughter. The massacre was kept secret for years. No one was ever prosecuted. For those who survived the massacre, life at Tadmor was no less brutal. Prisoners were packed into cells so tightly that many slept standing up. Sanitation was non-existent. Disease spread rapidly. There were no books, no letters, no contact with the outside world. Inmates often went months without seeing daylight. Many were denied medical treatment, even for life-threatening conditions. Executions were random and public. Prisoners were forced to watch their cellmates die, sometimes for infractions as small as whispering. There were no trials, no records, just silence. In the early 2000s, as Bashar al-Assad took power after his father's death, Syria briefly loosened its grip on dissidents. Tadmor was emptied, and some hoped it would be shut for good. But that hope was short-lived. By 2011, as the Arab Spring reached Syria, protests erupted across the country. The Assad regime responded with brutal crackdowns. Tadmor reopened its gates. Activists, journalists, and suspected rebels were thrown back in. The tortures resumed. Disappearances increased. The world watched as Syria spiraled into civil war while Tadmor returned to its old ways. Then in May 2015, something shocking happened. The militant group ISIS captured Palmyra and with it Tadmor Prison. In a widely publicized act, they blew up the prison with explosives. The world cheered the destruction of a symbol of tyranny. But the scars left by Tadmor didn't vanish with its walls. Today, Tadmor is in ruins. But for the thousands who passed through its gates, the trauma lives on. Human rights organizations like Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch have called it one of the most abusive prison systems of the 20th century. Testimonies from survivors describe it as a slaughterhouse, a black hole, and a place where hope died. Many former prisoners suffer from PTSD, depression, and permanent injuries. Others were never found lost to mass graves or secret executions. Tadmor wasn't just a prison. It was a tool of control used by a regime determined to silence every whisper of dissent. In the desert sands of Syria once stood a building made of concrete, but fueled by cruelty. Tadmor wasn't built by monsters. It was run by men who believed torture was justice and silence was peace. In the end, Tadmor fell. But the machinery that built it, the power, the fear, the impunity still lingers. And unless the world remembers what happened behind its walls, it could happen again. Number 7. Black Dolphin Prison, Russia. On the edge of the Russian-Kazakh border stands a fortress built not just to imprison, but to erase. A place where the worst of the worst are sealed away from society, forgotten by the world, and buried alive in steel and silence. This is Black Dolphin Prison, Russia's most feared penitentiary. And for those sent here, freedom doesn't exist. Only endless punishment. Black Dolphin Prison sits near the town of Sol-Iletsk in the Orenburg region of southwestern Russia, close to the border with Kazakhstan. It gets its name from a metal sculpture of a black dolphin ironically placed at the entrance by inmates years ago. But there's nothing ironic about what happens beyond those gates. Black Dolphin is a supermax prison, one of the most secure in the world. It houses the absolute worst: serial killers, terrorists, cannibals, and mass murderers. Every man inside has been sentenced to life in prison with no chance of parole. They are not prisoners. They are ghosts. In a system designed to make them vanish. Inmates at Black Dolphin are under 24-hour surveillance. Not just cameras, but guards, microphones, locked doors, double steel gates, and constant movement control. When prisoners are moved for interrogation, medical checks, or exercise, they are blindfolded and forced to bend at the waist with their hands cuffed behind their backs. Heads down and escorted by guards. Why? So they never learn the layout of the prison. So escape becomes impossible. They are housed in concrete cells within concrete cells, double-barred and sealed with 2,000-pound steel doors. Every hour, a guard checks on them. Even while sleeping, the light never turns off. There is no privacy, no contact with the outside world. No visits, no phone calls. Only 1 hour per day of exercise in a tiny caged courtyard under full surveillance. The inmates of Black Dolphin are considered Russia's most dangerous. Many are serial killers with confirmed body counts in the double digits. Some are organized crime bosses, responsible for mass murder and torture. Others are terrorists and extremists convicted of bombing public spaces and killing civilians. A 2019 Russian news documentary stated that between all prisoners inside Black Dolphin, the combined body count is over 3,500. One prisoner confessed to strangling 5 children. Another killed and cannibalized his victims. Another murdered 77 elderly women across multiple Russian cities. This is not a prison for redemption. It's a warehouse of monsters. Prisoners must stand at attention for 16 hours a day. They are not allowed to sit or lie down on their bunks during waking hours. They are allowed only 4 books, typically religious or philosophical texts. Meals are sparse: soup, bread, and tea, nothing more. Medical care is minimal and mental health support is practically non-existent. Suicide is not an option. Attempted and guards respond with brute force and additional punishment. Escape? It has never happened. No inmate has ever broken out of Black Dolphin. The prison's motto is unspoken but understood. You will die here. Even the guards at Black Dolphin are different. They undergo specialized training in psychological manipulation, martial arts, and maximum security tactics. They do not speak casually to inmates. They do not make mistakes. They operate in pairs, each watching the other to ensure zero corruption or sympathy. It's not just about preventing escape. It's about maintaining total control over men who have already defied every law of decency. The guards see their job not as correction but as containment, and they are ruthlessly efficient. Black Dolphin has been condemned by some human rights organizations as excessively harsh and inhumane. The UN has raised questions about long-term isolation, lack of mental health care, and deprivation of human contact. But in Russia, public opinion is different. Most citizens believe the punishment fits the crime. Why should serial killers get comfort? They deserve worse. Black Dolphin is too soft. That's the consensus, but some experts warn. When a system becomes only about punishment, it ceases to be about justice. And when a country locks away its problems without looking, what else slips into the darkness? At Black Dolphin, you're not just forgotten. You're erased. No names, no stories, no legacy, just a number. A face on a list, a body in a cage. And for the guards, the government, and the public, that's exactly how it's supposed to be. Because in Russia's darkest prison, there is no rehabilitation, no redemption. Only containment until death. Number 6. Kwang Prison, Thailand. They call it the Bangkok Hilton, but this is no luxury resort. It's a place where prisoners walk shackled for months, where hope dies slowly, and where a single mistake like carrying the wrong suitcase can become a death sentence. This is Kwang Central Prison, one of the most feared prisons in Southeast Asia. Located in Nonthaburi province, just outside Bangkok, Thailand, Kwang is the country's main maximum security prison. Built in the 1930s, it was originally intended for Thailand's most serious offenders, and that purpose hasn't changed. Kwang is home to death row inmates, foreign drug traffickers, violent criminals, life sentence prisoners. Locals and foreigners alike fear the name. Because once you enter Kwang, you're no longer a person. You're just a number behind concrete and iron. One of the most infamous parts of life in Kwang is the leg shackling system. All newly admitted prisoners, Thai or foreign, are forced to wear heavy iron shackles 24/7 for at least the first 3 months. For death row inmates, the shackles are welded on permanently. The metal bites into the skin, causes wounds, infections, and long-term damage. But there are no alternatives. It's standard procedure justified as security. And if you're caught misbehaving, solitary confinement is your next home. A tiny dark cell, no bed, no contact, no voice. Kwang was designed to house 3,500 inmates. Today it holds over 7,000. Cells meant for 4 people now squeeze in 10 to 15. There are no mattresses, just concrete floors. Sanitation is a nightmare. Water is limited. Toilets are shared in open view. Disease spreads fast. Food consists of watery rice soup, sometimes with bits of vegetable or fish head. If you want better meals, medicine, or soap, you must pay for it through family support or favors from guards. Foreigners with no connections suffer the worst. They face language barriers, cultural isolation, and often no legal aid. Some haven't seen a lawyer in years. Others don't even know how long they'll stay. One of the reasons Kwang is so overcrowded is Thailand's unforgiving drug laws. Possessing even a few grams of narcotics like heroin, cocaine, or meth can result in a death sentence or life imprisonment. Smuggling drugs through airports or bus terminals often ends with foreigners being locked up for decades. Stories abound of backpackers duped into carrying suitcases, or people caught with tiny quantities of illegal substances and then thrown into Kwang with murderers and terrorists. Trials can take years. Appeals often lead nowhere, and sentences are rarely reduced. Once convicted, a foreigner may be offered a chance to apply for a royal pardon or transfer, but the process can take decades, if it happens at all. Death row in Kwang is not just a sentence, it's a waiting game of mental torture. Inmates don't know when they'll be executed. There are no dates announced. No countdown, just sudden whispers, footsteps, and sometimes the guard calling your name. Until 2003, Thailand used firing squads for executions. Prisoners were tied to a wooden post and shot from behind a curtain. Today, executions are carried out by lethal injection. But the randomness of the procedure remains. Many inmates go to bed thinking it's just another night until they're led to the execution chamber without warning. In Kwang, death doesn't knock. It storms in quietly. Mental illness is rampant in Kwang. Inmates suffer from hallucinations, paranoia, depression, and suicide ideation. There's no real mental health care, no counselors, no therapy. Just the walls, the screams, the endless waiting. Even those who serve their time and are released rarely return to normal life. They are broken physically and psychologically. Many foreign inmates have said that the waiting is worse than the punishment. As one ex-inmate said, Kwang is a slow-motion execution. You don't die once you die every day. Kwang prison isn't just a jail. It's a monument to harsh justice, a place where time forgets you, where the air smells of rust, sweat, and despair. They call it the Bangkok Hilton with a bitter sense of irony because inside those crumbling walls, there is no comfort, no mercy, and no second chance, and for those still shackled within its cells, hope is the rarest currency of all. You've seen 5 prisons that defy comprehension. La Sabaneta, where gangs ruled the corridors. Rikers, where freedom was stolen before conviction. Tadmor, where voices were silenced in pools of blood. Black Dolphin, where the worst vanish without a trace. And Kwang, where even a mistake can cost you your life. But we're only halfway through. The next 5 prisons are darker, deadlier, and even more disturbing. In part 2, we take you inside the cages of America's Supermax Fortress, Venezuela's secret torture facility, and North Korea's modern-day concentration camp. Subscribe now, and don't miss what comes next, because some prisons don't just hold bodies, they bury souls.